Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, my name is Mina from Homestead, and today I'm going to be showing you guys what a sucker is, how to prune it and why to prune it off your tomato plant, and then I'll be showing you how to turn that sucker into an entirely new tomato plant. We're essentially going to clone the tomato. This is a way to turn one tomato plant into countless tomato plants, and it is super easy. This is one of the easiest ways to learn about plant propagation. So I'm going to show you what a sucker is and how to find it on your plant. So here is your tomato plant. This is its main stem, and this is what's called the leader. It's the main stem that grows up. And then you have these leaves that come out. And right here is the armpit of the tomato plant, and the sucker is going to grow out of that armpit. And the reason that you don't want these on your tomatoes is because they are going to suck all of the nutrition out, and it's going to try to make your plant bigger and not produce as much fruit, if that makes sense. So what you're going to want to do is pluck these off. This one is a little bit small. You could still root this and it will definitely grow into a tomato plant. But if you find one that's about 6 inches or bigger, that's going to be your best bet to grow from. Now, if you're having an extremely wet summer and you just pluck this off and you throw it down on the ground, that can make a whole new plant. It can stay wet. If it stays wet, it's going to grow roots. And that's why it's so easy to propagate tomatoes, because here's a pretty big one right here. You're just gonna break it off. And then you're going to stick this down in water, and all of these little hairs on your tomato plant is going to turn into roots. Anything that's touching water is going to turn into roots. You'll notice that after you've started pruning the bottom leaves off of your tomato plants, that these suckers are going to keep coming back. And you just want to pick that off so that it gives the plant more energy to put into making fruit instead of making a larger plant. Now, if you're wondering what these little jewelry bags are doing on my tomato plants, is I'm using them to keep the flowers on my plants from cross-pollinating from the plants next to them, because I'm going to save seeds and I want them to be true and not cross-pollinate. So what happens is insects will come along and they'll get on these plants, and then they could cross-pollinate to the variety next to it. But tomato plants don't need pollinators necessarily to pollinate. They are self-pollinating plants, and so all they need is the wind or somebody to come over, and the pollen just falls off from flower to flower and it pollinates itself. So you're going to take your tomato suckers that you've broken off your tomatoes, and you're going to put it in a jar of water. And that's it. That's all you do. You can change out the water every couple of days. You should change out the water every couple of days. Because if you don't and the water gets gross or you forget about them, the smell of a rotten tomato plant in water is one of the worst smells that I have ever experienced. I forgot about some one year and left them in there, and it was the worst smell ever. So don't forget about them. Change out the water every couple of days, and eventually you're going to see your tomato plants start to grow little roots. It's not going to take long. I've had it happen just within a couple of days. You're just going to stick that in the dirt after it grows roots. You can do other plants like this, specifically Basil works really well. Basil and tomatoes are two plants that are really easy to learn plant propagation. If you're interested in starting the process of learning how to propagate plants, water propagation is really easy to learn, and especially to learn with tomatoes, basil. And you can even do it if you have house plants. Let me show you. You can do it with like pothos and stuff. Hang on. So these are just some house plants that I've stuck in some water. This is, I don't even know what kind of pothos it is. It's just one of those little hanging house plants that you find, and after it's been in the water for I don't know, a week or so, you can see that it's already started to grow roots. And then this one is, I think it's called a purple heart. It's just a hanging plant, and it's not super purple because it hasn't been in direct sunlight. If you put them in a sunny window, they get really dark purple, but it's also started to grow roots on it right there. And all I've done is put it in a jar of water, just like the tomato plants, and that's what's going to happen here. This is also a great way to space out your harvest. If you've heard of succession planting, so you'll, like, say if you're planting lettuce, you'll plant lettuce every 2 weeks, and that way you have a crop every 2 weeks instead of getting all of your veggies in at one time. This can help with that, because instead of getting all of your tomatoes at one time, you plant, you know, like a row of tomatoes, and then you cut the suckers off, you root them. These tomatoes are going to be a few weeks, a month behind your other tomato plants, and that way you're getting tomatoes later in the season. So you also need to keep in mind how long it's going to take these to start growing and fruiting, and how many days you have left in your growing season, because you might start these and then, you know, you might not have enough time in your growing season for them to get big enough to grow fruit, and then the frost gets them. So just keep that in mind whenever you're starting these suckers. You just want to have enough growing season to be able to grow a whole nother plant. You could also take one of these suckers, and instead of sticking it in a jar of water, you could get a cup of soil potting mix and keep it moist. It has to have a moist environment to grow roots. And I'm sure that if you've grown tomatoes in the past and you've seen, like, if a tomato plant lays over or part of the stem is really close to the ground and it rains a lot, then you're going to start getting these white little nodes and roots coming out from the bottom of the plant. Same thing. So if you just stick this in a jar of dirt and you keep it wet, then it's also going to grow roots. It's the same idea. But when you do it in a jar of water, you're able to see it and make a cute little bouquet on your table of tomato plants until they begin to root. I hope that maybe I have taught you something new today, and you can go and apply this to your garden, or tell a friend who maybe wants some extra tomato plants, and they just smell so good. If you grow tomato plants, if you grow tomatoes, you know this smell. It's such an awesome smell. Leave me a comment down below if you've done this before, or if you haven't, or if you're going to try it. And if you do, please let me know how it turns out. And in the next video, I will show you if these have rooted. Thanks for watching, and keep growing, keep experimenting, and don't give up. Just do it. Don't be afraid to do it. And I'll see you next time.